No, Mash, not too late. I was just going to get some tea. Here we go. We have Anton face. So, you hear Mash? I love that command is still there. Right, let me just get my character to... You can't see my character at the moment because you see my face. But let me get myself to a point where I can leave the game. Yeah, I put that no sugar in tea thing in for somebody else I know who liked, is it bubble tea? Boba tea? Something like that, which is apparently stupid quantities of sugar. And we had this massive row about whether or not you should have sugar in tea. I drink my tea without sugar, and I always have. So, there we go. Right. Let me move my tab over there so that I can see what I'm doing. That's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. There we go. It triggers every time you say the word sugar. So this is just amusing me. Right, anyway, so story time with Antan. So first thing you should know is that I am dyslexic. It was properly diagnosed when I was in my early 30s. But it was recognised as something when I was at school. What they diagnosed it as when I was at school was dyspraxia, because a lot of the common symptoms of dyslexia I did not present. Also the understanding of what dyslexia is when I was at school wasn't there at the time. So yeah, it wasn't properly identified. Essentially, all my dyslexia did was to manifest as slowness in writing. And it took a lot of effort to do that writing. So when at school they asked me for an essay of 2,000 words, I would write an essay of 200 words and hand that in as my complete essay. And it would probably take me about as long to do those 200 words as the average person took to do 2,000 words. The problem was that I was very good at being concise with my answers. So my feedback often came back as demonstrates good understanding but needs more detail for all my essays, all my things that I submitted. So then I got to university. I did a master's in aerospace engineering, and I figured that I wouldn't declare any disabilities when I went to university, because since engineering is mostly math based, I figured I wouldn't have any problems. And I wasn't convinced that my problems were severe enough that it would cause me any real issue. When we got to the end of university, I was discovering that throughout my university life, and it's partly my fault for not raising it with anybody, my coursework results were sort of in the mid-50s in percentage results. My exam results were in the sort of 70s and 80s. So there was a big difference between the two, which, if anybody had been paying attention at all, they should have picked this up. And we should have at least had a conversation about it. Anyway, what happened was that when I got to my final year, something like 2/3 of the results in the final year were based on coursework, and the final year was worth about 30% of the degree as a whole. So therefore, because my coursework was much lower average, it brought my entire average down, and so I graduated with a master's with merit, which to most people sounds great. To me, I was very bitterly disappointed, because if it had been 100% exams, I would have got a distinction. And it annoyed me that my results were, I failed to get that distinction. Not because of my understanding of the work, not because of my knowledge, not because of my engineering ability, but because of my ability to write. And I found that very upsetting. And so for many years I've enjoyed creative writing. So even at school, when I was a kid, I would write stories. I used to do a lot of daydreaming as a child. I still do occasionally, and come up with all sorts of stories. And I thought, and there was this one story that I'd had in my head for a number of years at this point. I'd not done anything with, but it had sort of formed itself in my head from different sort of scenarios that I thought through, and things that I've been inspired by. And I thought, okay, having done my degree and been disappointed with it, and that disappointment being from my writing, I will start writing a novel, and I will do it to prove to myself that I can actually write that much. The other thing I should note, my master's dissertation, unlike most people's, which was probably over 100 pages long, my master's dissertation was about 30 pages, only 10 of which actually contained text. It would not surprise me if it was the shortest passing master's dissertation in the entire history of university. Excuse me a moment. Um, so, and part of that was because, and that was actually, that dissertation was actually probably the longest piece of writing single piece of writing that I'd ever written in my life at that point. So yes, this idea of a novel was to go, right, I'm going to write something that's a very long piece of work, and I'm going to do it just to prove to myself that I can write that much and I can achieve it. So it is a little bit ironic that 16 years later I still haven't finished it. But there you go. And I figured that I would start out, because I know that I tend to condense things. I went, well, I want to have something that's novel length and not a novel that's condensed into a short story, because I know that unless I force myself, that's what will end up happening. So I wrote an outline. I did it mathematically because that's how my brain works. I went, right, you've got a novel that will have an arc of 3 parts. So I thought, well, I'll write the overall arc. Or I have an idea for the overall arc. That will be split into 3 parts. Those 3 parts I'll split into 7 chapters. No, 8 chapters. And each chapter will be 7 pages long. And with each page being about 600 words, I think, I reckoned that that would give me a fairly short novel-length novel at the end of it. And the idea was that I write 1 page a day. So for 3 months after I finished university, I wrote a page a day for 3 months. I can't remember exactly why I stopped doing that or lost enthusiasm for that. I think it was because I then had to properly start job searching and stuff. Yeah, I managed to get, I think, at least a third of the novel done in that period. And of course, as I started writing it, I had more ideas for things to add in, so it ended up getting longer. And so actually, now that I'm at a point 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the novel, there's actually no question that will end up being novel length. But I put in an awful lot of filler to start with, the sort of Tolkien style descriptions, just to fill out the set piece scenes, to fill out the chapters to meet the page count. So there's a lot of that when I go through the second draft I will cut out. There's also a lot that I wrote to fill out the history and the lore of the universe that I put in story form in the book. Basically, the main character goes to a library and reads the history of the place, which I wrote in that way with the intention of taking out, but it allowed me to fill out the bits that I needed at that point. So there are things like that. Yeah. So, yeah, I have a novel that is written by hand that is now of the order of, I think it's 80 pages of handwritten story or thereabouts, double-sided. So it's 80 double-sided pages, so it's about 600 words per page. So what's that? 8 sixes, 48. I don't know. Novella length, yeah. So it's doing reasonably well. I haven't had time or energy or stuff to sort of sit down and finish it off. I know exactly where it goes from where it is now to the end of the book. I just need to extract that, put it on a page. Yeah, and then type it all up because it's handwritten. And then start on a second draft. The second draft, I've already got a bunch of additional story stuff that will fill in the first half, because I introduced characters halfway through that have their own backstories that I thought, actually, I need to weave in some of that history into my early part of the book to do some foreshadowing. There's also a lot of writing that is should we say quite immature from in a writing sense, that I can write better these days. So anyway, let me go through your comments now. So yeah, you think that you may have dyslexia as well? Yeah, it's possible. So cool, really admirable, thank you. Pretty sure we all have a book started and then put it down. You have a book, Kitten. Right, have a watch of Brandon Sanderson and Jenna Moriki on YouTube. Okay. You ought to send me links, Mesh. Yeah, my handwriting's a little indecipherable these days, so I'm gonna have fun going back through and reading it. Does it have a map? No, it doesn't have a map, because it's a sci-fi story that takes place in multiple systems, some of which I have names for, some of which I don't. I have not laid down how those systems are connected, because that means I gotta sit down and actually work out a massive map of everything. And to be quite honest, from a plot point of view, how they're connected doesn't matter, because the travel time between them takes as long as the travel time needs to take for the purpose of the plot. So it's just that I do need to, I have a rough idea of what the systems are, where they're located in relation to each other, and the sort of empires. So you've got some that are on the border, some that are closer to the core worlds. But other than that, no, I don't have a map. I did start drawing out family trees. One of the funny things about my novel is that I originally thought it was going to be a novel about loneliness and depression. And so I was going to have the main character be quite alone and solo. And I found one of the issues with that is that to have dialogue, you need two people. Because running through one person with their own thoughts gets very dull very quickly. And then I think at the end of the 8th chapter, I think I had him go essentially to his family's place, and then just in the space of one scene added 10 members of the family. So yeah, it ended up not being about loneliness at all. However, that did eventually sort of change and manifest more as PTSD. So it covers similar sort of psychological areas, but manifested differently. So yeah. Honestly, you wouldn't even bother with the first draft, just pretend it's detailed outline. Yeah, I know. I could, but then at the same time I'm faced with writing the whole thing from the beginning. And the brain just goes, that's a lot of effort. Particularly given I haven't written anything on it for a couple of years. I've done lots of thinking on it. And I mean, more recently I've tended just to sort of think of odd scenes that I wanted to add in and write up those scenes, and then add that to the pile of things to add in at some point. We splurge 50k in 1 month and then leave it for 2 days. 2 years, not 2 days. Yeah. Here's the thing, I can't write 50k in 1 month. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the story has evolved a lot since I started writing it. Well, it has and it hasn't. There are some things that I thought I'd changed, and then I went back and read the outline and went, actually, I preferred the original version that I first came up with, and I shifted it more to that. But I mean, so there is a let me go into some of the story. So there's a group in my story that are, in essence, samurai in space. Because I liked the sort of Jedi concept of guardians of peace and justice, but I didn't want the magic aspect. So what are Jedi essentially? Well, they are space samurai. So I came up with a concept of how we could have futuristic samurai in space. But in a way that makes sense in a universe where everybody uses guns. And What I didn't realise, I came up to with this concept entirely independently, which was that these folks have these personal shields that act as what's known as non-Newtonian fluids. So the faster something enters this field, the more it's stopped, right? So it allows slow movement, but not fast movement, and that sort of thing. I thought this was a fantastic, yes, custard, exactly. Fantastic, highly original concept for a personal shield that then allows people to fight with swords. Great, amazing. I told one of my friends this at university, and he said, "Oh, like in June." At that point, I hadn't even heard of June. And then when I looked it up, I go, yes, exactly like in June. But then it makes sense when you think through the concept logically. You go, well, you've got a sci-fi story where you want people to fight with swords. There's pretty much only one logical solution out of that. And so anybody who comes up with the same idea, well, there's not one. You've also got the Jedi thing with magic. So, yes. But if you want to keep an element of realism, then yes, you're going to end up with that result. So, yes, that's what happens. You want to know who did the story for your book too? The Bible. Yes, that is a good source. There's a lot of modern stories that are based on Shakespeare plays. The Lion King, for instance, is what? Hamlet or Macbeth? One of those? My original concept came from a computer game called Wing Commander, which I played as a child. It came out in the early 90s. And so the broad basis of the futuristic universe set up sort of comes from that with a few changes. And then I started... when I was playing those games, I weaved my own story for my own character into that universe. And then what I eventually did was I took that character and his story, and I developed a universe around that character. So a lot of that is very similar, but it's also now very different, because there are no space samurai in Wing Commander. I'm trying to think how we got onto the topic of space samurai. There was a point that I was trying to make that I've forgotten now. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, brain is sorted out now. No, I can't think what it was that I was going to say. So about that bath, yes, I was going to have a bath before going to bed. You need questions to answer for your TikTok. We need to have a long discussion about writing. What is 42? You've been doing writing advice? No, I haven't actually seen your videos, Mash. I've seen some of the sort of jingles that you posted on Instagram from TikTok, but no, because I think I only started following you fairly recently. I need to allow you to post some links. I don't actually have TikTok. I've tried as much as possible to avoid TikTok completely. You can see it on the PC. Okay, well, let me add that link. Show don't tell. You need to sell books. Yeah, I understand that. Oh, I meant to ask actually, what platform do you use to publish your books? Do you do print on demand? Do you do Amazon Kindle? You have a publisher. Ah. So you're doing the traditional route. I see. And do you have your publisher helps you with an editor? They've not yet edited book 1 yet. Ah. So did you self-publish it before? See, now I'm starting to get questions. I'm not sure if this is entertaining as a stream. You wrote the book, then cried to your friend who happened to own a publishing company. Yep, that's one way of getting published. Yeah. I know, so I got a friend, Charlie, who Kitten knows. Also known as Frost and Fire. She, I think her mum runs a publishing company. I'm not entirely sure. But, so I do actually have 2 published stories, which Charlie collated 2 anthologies of D&D based stories. So I have a story in each. I actually wrote a story for the 3rd book, but it never manifested. So I have finished something, yes. But, I mean, those are very short stories. Yeah, I suppose I can at least say that I do have published stories. Still counts, yeah. I have both of those books. It's quite cool. Charlie was quite surprised when I told her that I wanted to have it listed under the name Antan rather than my real name. I didn't realise Beth had stopped. Still don't know what you'll use. I mean, one of my thoughts is, if I do get serious about the idea of publishing the novel, I will pay for an editor independently, and then probably look at various self-publishing options, whether that's print on demand or through Amazon for the Kindle or something. I don't know. Or go and ask Charlie and say, will you publish my novel for me? I don't know. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be your own editor. And I suspect that if I get an editor to look at my story, they'll probably have very good ideas of how to improve it. Particularly in my weak areas, such as picking names. My names are very dull and boring. Mum, can you look at this? Yeah. I've actually read, so I've got a few books on my bookshelf of the whole writing and publishing process. So industry advice on writing stories and going what you need to do to go through the publishing process. So I have some idea. I've not looked into it recently, mainly because I got to actually finish the novel first. But yes. At some point I will have to do a stream where I just sit here and tell everybody about the topics of my novel and the story and see if people are interested. How it came about. And ask and answer questions and those sort of things. Anyway, I'm very conscious of the fact that I've been sat here for 40 minutes talking about my story while Mike's been busy playing on his stream. With my voice playing through to his stream. Either that or you've muted me, Mike.
No, I haven't.
So, yeah. He's killing things, it's all good, yes. Yeah, I've gotta go. But thank you for coming along, Mash, and I'm sure we will talk some more again in the future if you're interested. Maybe we do a joint stream or something where we have a chat, because I'm sure that'll be fun. If you're up for it. Cool. Okay. I am going to end my stream there, because Kitten's giving me very strong hints that I must go. Thank you, Mash, for coming along. You have a good night. Yes, I am trying to end. And we will raid over to Mike for the last 15 minutes. I'm not sure when I'm next going to be streaming. At the very worst, it will be doing an art stream next Friday when Kitten and Mike are doing Grim Dawn. No?
There will not be a Grim Dawn next week.
Oh, no, because Kitten's at conventions.
Yep.
So I might do an art stream whilst you do No Man's Sky or something.
Probably be more likely Dying Light.
Okay, cool. So that's the worst case scenario. I may do another stream before then, but we will see. If all else fails, go and check out Kitten in the mornings and check out Mike in the evenings. They're both wonderful.
That's what we wanted.
And
For that.
yeah, I bid you a good night.
Night all. Take care. It's map completion done.